It is now my pleasure to introduce Rear Admiral Brian Fort. He is a surface warfare officer with numerous at-sea and ashore assignments. As Commander, Navy Region Hawaii, he oversees installations on Oahu and Kauai, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, and Pacific Missile Range Barking Sands. As Commander, Naval Surface Group Middle Pacific, he provides oversight for surface ships home ported here in Hawaii. And to me, he is a very valued colleague and a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Rear Admiral Brian Fort.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I have learned in the 16 months that I've known Jacqueline, and it's a lesson I continue to learn but fail at, is never follow Jacqueline at a speech. She kills it every time, and she always gets it exactly right. No matter what I say, I can't top or equal Jacqueline. But Kelly and I appreciate your friendship, and we appreciate you in the National Park Service and all who made today possible. On behalf of our Navy team here in Hawaii, it is my distinct honor to welcome back all of our Pearl Harbor survivors and your families. We offer a warm welcome to all World War II veterans and all other military veterans, active duty and retired, as well as your families who join us here today for this very special occasion. Today's ceremony marks the midpoint of our 75th commemoration events, which began 2 years ago. Today, we consider the tragedy of what happened here in 1941, but we also recognize the resilience and the grit of our nation and our veterans from 75 years ago, 1943, when we forged the future. In 1943, Pearl Harbor was most certainly an operationalized base. Here in the middle of the Pacific, our Navy focused on the needs of our fleet. Sailors at Pearl Harbor ensured that our ships, our submarines, and our planes had the repairs, the fuel, the supplies, and the logistics that we needed to fight. And we continue that legacy today, just as we did more than 75 years ago, because we must always be ready. In just under 2 years here in Pearl Harbor, we will commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. And at that time, just as we do today, we will continue to demonstrate commitment, vigilance, and readiness. The sacrifice, the lives lost here at Pearl Harbor and throughout all of World War II will always be remembered. And that memory will continue to forge a generation of peace, partnership, and prosperity for many generations. Now, today, here in Pearl Harbor, people from different nations, backgrounds, beliefs, all live and serve together as one Ohana, all for a better world. Today, we're very honored to have Admiral Phil Davidson as our keynote speaker. Admiral Davidson is a leader who is absolutely committed to vigilance and readiness. He's a stalwart defender of our nation, our allies, and the freedom that ensures international order, particularly here in the Pacific. As a surface warfare officer, he has deployed across the globe. And as ashore, he has excelled as a senior leader, recognized for his bold and dynamic style and strategic insight. Admiral Davidson leads joint U.S. military forces as Commander, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, America's oldest and largest military combatant command, with men and women serving an area of responsibility that stretches not only across the Pacific, but to the west coast of India, from the Arctic to Antarctica. As Commander, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, he defends and deters our adversaries. He develops friendships with allies, partners, and friends, and he delivers the readiness necessary to ensure freedom of the seas and freedom of the skies. He stands ready to defeat our adversaries if deterrence fails and the call comes. Ladies and gentlemen, Please join me in welcoming Commander, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Phil Davidson.
Good morning and aloha. Thank you, Brian, for the introduction and for your leadership and stewardship of this historic place. Thank you, Superintendent Ashwell, as well, for your marvelous remarks this morning. There are a number of distinguished guests here today, but in the interest of time, I won't try to acknowledge everyone, but I do want to take just a moment to recognize a few honored attendees. Secretary Perdue, welcome this morning. State and city leaders, Governor Ige, Mayors Caldwell and Asota, esteemed members of our Consular and Diplomatic Corps, fellow flag and general officers, leaders of the National Park Service. Welcome and thank you for your attendance today. Most importantly, a special welcome to the greatest generation, our World War II veterans and Pearl Harbor survivors to whom we owe an immeasurable debt for your heroic actions. And welcome to all of our veterans here today. It is truly an honor to be speaking to you today, December 7th, on these hallowed grounds. For many, the date is the reminder. For those of us that live here, serve here, I will tell you, we think of this day every day. We can never forget the heavy price paid 77 years ago. 21 vessels damaged or sunk, 170 planes destroyed, more than 2,400 dead and 1,200 wounded, soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and civilians. Despite these heavy losses, it did not break the American spirit. In fact, it charged it. We quickly prepared for the long, hard war to come. Just over a year after the attack here, in his 1943 State of the Union speech, President Franklin Roosevelt spoke of the challenges that remained, saying, "The past year was perhaps the most crucial for modern civilization. The coming year will be filled with violent conflicts, yet with high promise of better things." He went on to say, "First in the importance in the American scene has been the inspiring proof of the great qualities of our fighting men. It was these qualities, the resilience and determination, that helped shape this country's, and indeed the entire world's, future. The tide of the war started to change in 1943, with the fight to secure Guadalcanal ending in February, giving the U.S. and our allies their very first major offensive victory in the Pacific, and a stop to Japanese expansionism. In June, Japanese forces began to leave the Aleutian Islands, their last foothold in the Western Hemisphere, and the Allies began to move through the Central and Southwest Pacific. On the other side of the world, in North Africa, Rommel and his Africorps was forced to retreat, and the Allies began their push through Italy, causing the Italians to drop out of the war. And meanwhile, planning began for the eventual landing of Allied forces in Western Europe. Though the tide of the war was indeed changing in 1943, the price to be paid remained steep. In November of that year, our Marines, supported by naval gunfire support and naval aviation, won the first contested amphibious landing in the Pacific on the Tarawa Atoll. Facing an entrenched and determined Japanese defense, the Marines fought valiantly over 3 days to secure that strategic airfield. The battle for Tarawa saw some of the fiercest fighting of the war to date, with nearly 6,400 Japanese, Koreans, and Americans killed in just 3 days of fighting. The heavy loss of life served as a reminder that although the Allies were making progress and shaping the future of the war, it would come at significant human cost. The unconquerable spirit of the heroes of the greatest generation enabled them to rise to the occasion. They understood the importance of what they were fighting for, and in the words of Herb Weatherwax, as mentioned earlier, they served willingly, they fought willingly, and they died willingly. Now, as Superintendent Ashwell mentioned in her remarks, we are sadly losing a number of these heroes. Among many others, we lost Ray Emery in August, and over the Thanksgiving holiday just 2 short weeks ago, at 106 years young, we lost Ray Chavez. And just a week ago today, we lost another member of the greatest generation with the passing of President George Herbert Walker Bush. As you all saw during the eulogies over the past week, President Bush embodied that unconquerable spirit. And as a Navy pilot and World War II veteran, he shared a special bond with Pearl Harbor survivors. He understood the significance of our men and women's sacrifice and spoke here at the 50th commemoration saying, "The friends I lost, that all of us lost, upheld a great and noble cause. Because of their sacrifice, the world now lives in greater freedom and peace than ever before." We cannot forget the sacrifices made by these brave men and women, the Herb Weatherwaxes, the Ray Chavez, or the George Herbert Walker Bushes. For to forget them is to dishonor the actions taken to defend our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is why ceremonies like today's and organizations like the National Park Service are so important, to educate and inspire future generations to work toward a better future. And since World War II, the United States has continued to play an active role in ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. Free, both in terms of security, free from coercion by other nations, but free in terms of our values and political systems as well. And open in the belief that all nations should enjoy unfettered access to the seas and airways, open trade, upon which all of our nations and economies depend on. This concept is not necessarily new. In many ways, it is similar to the international rules-based order born from the post-World War II era. But we must remind ourselves, Americans fought and bled for these lands, not to conquer them, but to liberate them. Then together, with allies and partners, we helped rebuild Japan. We pushed back aggression in South Korea. And we advanced the security architecture of the post-war era in a way that has led to this region's collective prosperity. The United States continues to work alongside our allies and partners towards this shared vision. But challenges remain. There are nations and forces in the region today opposed to the idea of a free and open region. I promise you, the United States will continue to work alongside our allies and partners towards that vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific. We will remain opposed to those who desire to lead a region that is closed and authoritarian. We cannot fail, and we will not fail. May God bless our Pearl Harbor survivors, our World War II veterans, and the greatest generation. May God bless those who follow in their wake, the men and women of our armed forces today, every one of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, past, present, future, who will step forward to defend this nation. May God bless the beautiful state of Hawaii, and may God bless the United States of America, which will forever be the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Davidson.